It's Ash from Super Videos, back for another one. We're back to talk about The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2. Of course, several months ago we got a confirmation that The Last of Us will be adapted into a TV show and it will be going to HBO, which got many of The Last of Us fans extremely excited. Now in this video I'm going to talk about how the storyline is most likely going to be adapted into the TV show, and I'm going to make some predictions about the season structure in a TV format for The Last of Us. Now I'm not going to go deep into spoilers about The Last of Us, and I'm not really going to go into The Last of Us Part 2 as far as breaking it down into all of the different chapters that are a part of the story. But what I will do is, as I'm going through the first game and how it's going to be adapted into the TV show and how the seasons are going to look, I will kind of touch on at which point we can expect to see The Last of Us Part 2 adapted into the TV show. We're going to go through all the chapters from Part 1, and I'm going to try to align them with where they might lie in the seasons of The Last of Us in the TV show. So stay tuned, we'll be right back with more. Alright, before we get into this, if you are not a subscriber and you enjoy the content by the end, consider subscribing to join the community, and also make sure to press the bell to be notified when I upload, and smash the like button if you do enjoy the content. If you are a fan of The Last of Us, you can definitely expect me to cover The Last of Us when it premieres. I'm going to be doing a lot of comparison videos and things of that nature. So with that said, let's just dive right into it. So as far as the chapters of The Last of Us, there's pretty much 12 different chapters or 12 different sections of this story. Now the way I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna go through all of the different chapters and say how many episodes I think that particular story is gonna take, and then that'll kind of give us a clear picture of the roadmap of the storyline as far as the TV show version goes. Gives us an idea about how much they're gonna adapt directly from the game and how much they're gonna remix it. Either add stuff to it or kind of expand on the things that were already mentioned in the game. I'm going to assume that each season will be a regular 8-episode season. And after kind of lining things up, it definitely looks like we're gonna get at least 2 seasons. I will refer to first half and second half of each season, and by that I just mean the first 4 episodes and the next 4 episodes. Let's start with the prologue. Of course, in the game, the prologue is not only the start of the story, it introduces us to the story and introduces us to the characters, but it also introduces us to the universe, to the world. So I think that in the TV show adaptation, they're definitely gonna dive a little deeper into the prologue. Now obviously in the game, the prologue was really short and we didn't really deep dive into some of the storylines and some of the breakdown of society as the virus was going around. And that's where I think the biggest remix of the story is gonna be. I think in the TV show adaptation, they're actually going to focus more on the prologue, and they're gonna give us a more expanded and detailed version of that prologue, and they're gonna tell us exactly how society fell. Of course, one of the many criticisms for The Walking Dead is that they didn't really invest time and story to tell us how society broke apart and what happened when the virus was spreading. And even in The Last of Us, they kind of skipped through a little bit of that in the prologue. So I'm thinking what they're probably gonna do is they're gonna focus a little bit more on that, and they're gonna tell us a little bit more about who Joel was before everything went down. They're gonna tell us a little bit about Sarah and their relationship, and even Tommy and Joel's relationship. And they're gonna, in the first episode, kind of give us a more detailed version of the events of the first day of the apocalypse, you could say. Could be a full episode, and it might even spill over into the second episode. But I have a feeling that the first episode is probably gonna be starting where it started in the game and ending right before we get the 20-year time jump. And like I said, they're probably gonna spend more time telling us some of these characters' backstories, like Tommy, Joel, and Sarah. They're gonna tell us a little bit more about how everything fell apart. And then that's gonna take us to episode 2, which I think is gonna start with the quarantine zone chapter from the game. And I think that there's a good chance that this might be 2 to 3 episodes. So episode 2 and 3 will most likely focus on introducing us to this new way of life, to the quarantine zones, and to how everything is structured. And through that storyline, we're obviously gonna meet Tess, and we're gonna learn about what Joel and Tess do and about their mission. And I think that that's gonna spill over into episode 3. And I think episode 2 is probably gonna end around the time when Ellie enters the story. And then going into episode 3 and maybe even a little bit of episode 4, we're gonna get the outskirt storyline from the game, where I think we're gonna get 2 big things: the big reveal about who Ellie really is and how important she is, and the second thing is the bigger picture, which is the Fireflies and all of that. And I think at this point they're probably gonna focus more on telling a little bit more about who the Fireflies are. I'm not saying they're gonna reveal too much at this point, but I do think that they're gonna plant the seeds about the Fireflies and about their mission a little bit more than they had done in the game at this point, based on how much they want to intertwine part 1 and part 2 in the TV show. They might actually give us some of the storylines from part 2, some backstory about the formation of the Fireflies, and they could potentially tell us a little bit about Abby and her father, and they could kind of set that up for later on in the show. And that takes us to episode 4, which, like I said, is where the first half of the season will be. We're gonna have the Billy's Town storyline from the game. And I think this is another area where they can expand on, and they can focus a little bit more on Billy's past, his backstory, and his connection to Joel. Maybe they're gonna give us some stuff that we didn't really see in the game, and they're gonna tell us why Billy owes Joel and all of that. And I think that this episode is probably gonna end on a note where they're gonna head to Pittsburgh. And I think that the storyline in that chapter where they get ambushed will be where this episode 4, is gonna end. So that'll be like its cliffhanger. And then coming up in the second half of the season, we're gonna get the Pittsburgh storyline. They're gonna run into Sam and Henry. And the storyline we're gonna see in this episode is probably gonna spill over into the next episode. I could definitely see the Pittsburgh storyline taking 2 episodes in total, so episode 5 and 6. And then going from there, the suburbs chapter from the game. There was obviously not a lot of storyline at this point, so this is an episode that they can kind of merge with the Pittsburgh storyline. And that takes us to episode 7, which is most likely gonna revolve around the chapter from the game where we actually get to Tommy's dam. And we're introduced to Tommy and his crew. And I think that this is another area where they can expand the storyline, make it a full episode, like give us a full rundown of what happened to Tommy and what he was doing all of this time. And that takes us to the last episode of the first season, episode 8. This episode, I think, is gonna be the episode Joel and Ellie travel to the university. This is gonna be where they try to find the Fireflies, and then things don't go quite as they expected, and I think this episode is probably gonna end with Joel's injury. Now, I'm not gonna go into detail about what that's about, but I think when we get to the end of the first season, that's gonna be where the story kind of shifts from Joel towards Ellie. So when we get to the second season, episodes 9 and 10 maybe, that's where we're gonna kind of see what happened after Joel's injury. And we're gonna get Ellie's story at that point. This is where they can bring the Left Behind storyline from the comics, which tells us the story of what Ellie was doing at that time and how she helped Joel. The Left Behind storyline is gonna interconnect with the Lakeside Resort chapter from the game, where we actually see Ellie surviving on her own while Joel is healing. And obviously when they do visit the Left Behind storyline, that's probably gonna be where they're gonna give us Ellie's backstory and tell us a little bit about what she was doing before her journey with Joel started. And that's probably where they can bring Riley in and kind of give us a full rundown of that storyline that we saw in Left Behind. Now, even though I am saying this is going to be only 2 episodes, it's probably going to be a little bit more. It might be like 3 to 4 episodes. But for the sake of this video, let's just assume that it's going to be around 2 episodes. And that's what takes us to the next chapter of the story, which is the bus depot, which I think is probably going to be like 1 episode, if that. And that takes us to episode 12. Episode 12 all the way to maybe 13 or 14 is going to be the chapter from the game revolved around the Firefly Lab storyline and Return to Jackson and all of that. And like I mentioned, depending on how much they invest on the Ellie storyline after Joel's injury, this may be shifted back to like episode 14 or 15. So there's a very good chance that they're gonna kind of shift everything back and have that chapter, which is the final chapter from game 1, taking all the way to the end of the 2nd season. Which obviously means that if they do end up doing The Last of Us Part 2, it'll be in season 3. But then again, if things line up the way I predict, it's probably going to be around episode 13 or 14 where the full part 1 storyline is going to be, and then the last few episodes maybe kind of getting into the 2nd game. And maybe the way they're gonna do it is they're not gonna do it out of order like they did in the game, and they're gonna actually do it in chronological order and have the story flow smoothly. So the events of the end of Last of Us will connect to the events of the start of The Last of Us Part 2. And I'm trying to do this without any spoilers, so I'm not sure if that made any sense. But if you've played the games, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But with all of that said, that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover. But I am interested to know everyone's thoughts and opinions. Let me know how you think they're gonna adapt the storyline from The Last of Us into the TV show. Do you think they're gonna make any big remixes, or do you think that they're gonna stay pretty loyal to the storyline from the game? Do you think they're gonna change the storyline, or do you think they're just gonna kind of expand upon certain storylines that they kind of skipped over in the game? Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. If you enjoyed what you saw, make sure to smash the like button. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe to join our community and press the bell to be notified when I upload. That's it for this video. See you next time for another super video.